first episode.
Wait, never mind. Not the line. You ready?
Yep, rolling.
Rolling.
Sick. Hello, marketing geniuses. Welcome to Gen Z on Gen Z, the podcast that breaks down the generation so you don't have to. You got your two favorite Gen Z hosts today. I'm AJ.
And I'm Lilia.
And let's get into it. All right, so today's topic is all about Gen Z's relationship with money. We're going to unpack three major trends we're witnessing plague Gen Z wallets across the nation. First being the rising dependence on Gen Z's parents' retirement funds, which is super interesting. Mm-hmm. We'll get into the gig economy and what that means, as well as this macro trend of emotional spending. But before we get into that, the most important thing we'll always have to ask, Lilia, what is on your For You page this week?
It's a great question, AJ. I would say in general, my For You page consists of a lot of dating content. I am a single Gen Zer in New York, in the big city, big city. So I get a lot of content that is just about, you know, some really sad single girls, some really excited single girls, and then all the horror stories you hear in the dating world. So a lot of dating talk. I mean, Risa Tisa obviously has been like on everyone's For You page over the past week, but she has been my entire life for the past week and a half.
It takes that long to watch all like 50 parts.
The 50 part series, which I'm sure we'll have a whole episode on that method in itself, but dating content, big. And then I oddly get a lot of American Idol reruns. Do you get those?
I don't, but I'm really jealous.
I get every other slide down my For You page. I get old American Idol like performances and then audience reactions. It's one of my biggest niches that I have on my For You page. It's crazy. What's on yours, AJ? What's going through your For You page?
Well, definitely I wish American Idol was on there, but I think in general, I've been seeing a lot of, do you follow or come across a creator? Her name's Molly, but her username is Princess Milky.
I do not know Princess Milky, no.
She, to me, is like mother. She's everything to me. And then some, like, she just shares like these insane hot takes on like internet culture of like always going against the grain. And I'm always like, yeah, you're right. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
No,
but
I like the sound of it.
At Princess Milky, she's so funny.
Okay.
I've also been getting a lot of bad DJ mashups of like, think of like DJ Mandy was that really big creator. She's now on festival lineups, starting off on TikTok
the power
jokingly.
Of TikTok.
Yeah, with like a classical song mixed with like a Nicki Minaj verse.
Okay.
It was crazy. And then also a lot of idealized mom talk.
I get idealized mom videos a lot too.
No idea why I'm getting served that, but there's this one woman who like is in her kitchen smiling constantly, like baking bread from scratch every day for her kids.
The one dressed up in fancy outfits in her kitchen.
The cottagecore one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that, which is a little strange, but
it's working because it gets us watching and we watch from start to finish and then we talk about it on a podcast.
Exactly.
So with all that being said, let's pivot to why we are here today. Gen Z's relationship with money. To put it simply, I'm sure both of us can relate to this in some way or another. We have a tumultuous, say the word 3 times, a tumultuous relationship with it. And it's imperative for marketers to understand, A, our financial standing, if they want to meet us where we are and get us excited to even spend the few bucks that we have to our names. That's, I think, the biggest thing.
No, totally. And to add on to that, the brands that understand this are the ones who are curating these loyal, Gen Z fan bases. They're collecting those super fans that are excited to advocate for those brands. These brands are supporting Gen Z time and time again and just seeing results on and off social from it. Mm-hmm. And if Gen Z's financials aren't great, something I'll say is that doesn't mean we're not spending money.
Oh,
Trust
totally.
me, a lot of us have intense spending problems.
Yeah.
It just means that we're more critical about the brands we want to shop from and the brands we want to give our money to.
Exactly.
And Lilia, I'll pass the mic over to you to set the scene here.
Okay.
What the heck do parents' retirement funds have to do with how Gen Z spends their money?
It's a great question, AJ. And we're noticing that Gen Z is actually ruining their parents' retirement funds to get by, which I will preface, I don't relate to that part of it because that sounds outrageous. I remember when we were doing research and noticed that this generation, our generation, is so dependent on their parents when it comes to financials so different than we've seen in past generations. I'm on the cusp of a millennial Gen Zer, so I feel like this part of my cusp side skews to the millennial half. But millennials do not mess around with their parents' money. They do not want to depend on their parents financially. They take a lot of pride in being financially independent. I feel like it was like a badge of honor when we were in college and we weren't touching our parents' money to get by.
100%.
But Gen Z, on the other hand, depends on their parents' financials. According to Bankrate, nearly 68% of parents who have Gen Z children have made at least one financial sacrifice to help their kids. And over half of the parents surveyed by Bankrate say they've dipped into their savings to help their adult children out. I mean, that just speaks for itself. 68% is insane.
That is absolutely wild. And even as a Gen Zer, like, I guess closer to the Gen Z side myself, I'm still with you. At the end of the day, it's something that needs to happen for some Gen Zers, specifically when we look at it in the context of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, maybe the older Gen Zers who were living their best lives in college, they had that badge of honor of being financially independent, being kind of sent back home and revert back to the ways that they lived life in high school, middle school.
Totally.
Like, it was a big,
mind bleep.
Yeah, thank you. and with that, they're brought back to a time where the fridge is always stocked, where they don't have to pay necessarily rent or all the bills that they were responsible for. And for a lot of them, this is, while many still might not be living with their parents anymore and were able to move back out or whatever their case is, that expectation of financial support still rings true for them.
Totally. I feel like I have a perfect example of this. I have a little sister. She's 3 years younger than me. So she's fully Gen Z. And she does live at home with my parents. And although she has a job and she's totally financially independent, she still has that expectation in a lot of ways to get support from my parents financially. And they're the best. I mean, they'll help her out whenever she needs to be helped. But it's so mind-boggling for me as a person who lives in New York City. I completely fund my entire life. It is that like disconnect because she was a pandemic college student. But that itself, I think that's something to really remember as we continue to discuss how brands participate in this conversation. Because if you, again, are trying to meet our audience, meet Gen Z where they're at, you have to understand the full context. You have to understand the reasons why they feel this way, especially about money. And if we understand the why, if we understand what got them there, if we understand how the dependency came to be, then we can relate to them more. And it can be more of an understanding of, hey, we're trying to get you to spend money and we know you might not have it, or we know you might be borrowing from your parents. So we're going to make it worth your while. First, going off the assumption that, they'll spend. Like, right. It's more nuanced than that.
Completely agree. You're hitting the nail on the head when it comes down to how brands can support us in this, in the sense of like, we're not asking brands to like lower all their prices and like change everything.
It'd be great if you did, you guys.
Yeah, just putting that out there. But
we're not asking you to do it because there's a way around it.
Exactly. It's really about finding that emotional benefit and finding that way to make the product and make the experience you're offering your consumers really worthwhile and get them excited to shell out a few extra bucks if they have it.
Yeah. And honestly, that's a great segue into the tips we have to marketers when it comes to how we can break this down and, again, meet Gen Z where they're at when it comes to their financials. A great brand that I think does an awesome job at showing their understanding of where Gen Z's at financially is Essence Cosmetics. They are in that more budget brand category. They have affordable prices, and they really do lean into that messaging when advertising their products. They do a great job at appealing to Gen Z, younger Gen Z, and even Gen Alpha has definitely come about to at least their fan base because, again, it's affordable and they get that. For instance, I think back to school is a great example. It's back to school. You have high schoolers and middle schoolers who want to buy makeup products, buy beauty products to go look good at school. And so they're going to Walmart, they're going to these more budget makeup stores that offer Essence Cosmetics. And the way they promote it is back to school messaging, understanding that you're spending all this money on school supplies, understanding that mom and dad are helping you with your school supplies, there are these layers to, again, using back to school as an example, there are these financial layers. And so when you're promoting your products in this situation, you want to make sure you're leading with that value messaging. You get 3 products for the price of 1, whatever it may be. And I've seen that time and time again with Essence Cosmetics, and I think it does a great job. And I mean, if you even look at their website right now, they're doing a great job at promoting a new product SKU, and it is very much leaning into that value messaging. So that's just an example right off the top of my head of a brand that understands their audience financially in particular.
I love that example. And just one thing I'll add to that too is if your brand is not in that same budget bracket as Essence or those more budget friendly beauty brands, the key word there to me is value and showing maybe not, it's showing what does this product offer you when you're at school, like returning to school or, holiday, it's like your Christmas parties or holiday parties and whatnot, like what this product will make you feel and what the value in that is, which I think is just a truth across any brand, but definitely benefits the ones that are a little more friendly to us.
And we'll definitely get into the emotional spending mentality in just a few moments too, because that's a huge part of why Gen Z is willing to spend the extra money on certain things. Like to your point, if I know a brand is going to make me feel good about myself, I will find the rationalization to spend. So stay on the edge of your seats, folks. We'll get there.
Love that. Okay. So switching gears to our next topic of discussion. The gig economy. What is it and why it's important? To beef up their bank accounts, Gen Z is becoming more and more intertwined with this idea of the gig economy, which is essentially a fancy way of saying that they are the side gig generation. According to Bloomberg, 50% of Gen Zers have a side hustle to combat record high inflation. This can be anything from working at the neighborhood coffee shop on Saturday mornings once their 9-to-5 work week ends, or driving for Uber Eats after class or in summer vacation, to selling clothes on Depop, whether it's like actively trying to find stuff at Goodwills and everything to repurpose and sell, or just cleaning your closet out as much as possible, to even drop shipping. This is a side hustle many TikTok girlies are obsessed with. I could not explain it at all, but I'm like, maybe. It's like in my notes app. I'm like, try drop shipping.
Just drop shipping.
Literally. But they're doing it for that extra cash. The TLDR here is that Gen Z has 2 approaches to side gigs. They're either taking the super practical way out, like driving for Uber Eats or Postmates or whatnot, or monetizing their hobbies. And this is the thing we really want to double down on.
Totally. And I think it's really interesting too, because obviously since the birth of TikTok, we have been shown by the evolution of creator and influencer culture that you can monetize your life. You can monetize, to your point, your hobbies. You can monetize things that you just do while you simply exist. And we have been shown over the past 3 years, especially more than ever. Of course, this culture, has dated back to the OG YouTube girlies a decade ago. But now this more consolidated time period is showing us that anyone theoretically could make money by just living. And because since TikTok hit the mainstream in 2020, you see this happening and you see these people getting really fat checks for doing seemingly not a lot. And it really makes people like us, I know both of us have talked about this in the past, it makes us think, well, what the hell are we doing? Like, how can we monetize this form of a gig? Because creator culture and influencer culture is a gig in itself. But because we're being shown this, it makes us think, like, how can I do that in my own life? How can I have this overnight Alex Earl effect? And how can I get paid for this? What can I do to mimic that mentality?
Exactly. And, heck, in 2019, I started my own, it was like a fashion music blog called The Anthony Jason.
No, you did not.
So insane for that exact same purpose. I was like, I'm going to be famous. This is my approach to becoming famous.
Oh, we both think we're going to be famous.
One day. It's
Click on the
manifesting. Yeah. Share this with a friend. But all that to say, I think there's this idea of when we're thinking about monetizing our hobbies, whether it is influencer culture or sharing our thoughts and opinions on things that give us joy, to even, like if you're really good at crocheting, like, cool, let me make an Etsy shop and make some content about it on TikTok. Gen Z, therefore, is reframing their relationship with hobbies to be fully driven by commerce. And this is something, on page, it's like, great, they're getting more money for doing something they love. Like, cool. But when you think about it, this monetization of hobbies is really just sucking the joy and the fun out of something that once gave them a lot of joy. Because now if you're so like dead set on the fact of like, oh, this isn't giving me the return on investment that I'm looking for, I'm just
like,
not
why am
gonna
I
do
doing it? Yeah.
Exactly. Which it sucks to see, you know, if you're really talented at something and, you know, it's maybe your Etsy shop isn't blowing up or your TikTok isn't doing super well, like keep on keeping on. Like you're talented.
Yeah. And it's like, if you think about 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing. You were knitting because you like to knit. You weren't knitting to make an Etsy shop. You were, you know, you were living a life with your friends and having really content fueled moments that you weren't capturing because it felt good. And it's not to say not to do it, but I think that's a huge thing with our generation is to figure out that balance between, you know, obviously wanting to make money out of things that fuel you while also not putting that pressure on yourself, or if it's not giving you that return on investment, you feel bad. I was about to say a bad word. You feel bad about yourself. And then again, it ruins what you did in the first place.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of the crux of, you know, this entire section. It's like, it's clear that Gen Z is on a quest for joy and everything, just based on the world around them. Like, they really try to find the joy in things.
They really
do. Yeah, whether that be online, IRL, anything in between, it's just, we're growing up in that interesting part of history where it's really hard to find that constantly. So amidst the pressures of home and school and work and additional sources of income, it's important, you know, for all of you listening, how can your brand frame your product or service as a mental or physical escape for Gen Z that allows them to reconnect with their own definition of joy? And, you know, escapism is just like a large conversation, which we'll talk about in a future episode. But if you're in this society or you're growing up and, again, it's hard to find joy, it's a responsibility of brands to then find ways to bring that back to them.
Yeah, it's like bridging a gap. It's saying, hey, we see this need. We have this product. What way can we best convey your route to joy, your route to feeling good about yourself, your route to living a fun life by just giving you that messaging that makes you say, yeah, that literally would make me feel good.
Exactly. And I think one example of a brand that really taps into that nicely is Pinterest. And it's interesting because Pinterest obviously isn't a physical product that you can purchase, but last year, they did their Pinterest Manifestival that ran at Cannes last summer.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It, like, to me, I'm just in awe of this event. Like, I don't know why it's sticking with me so much, but
Because it was cool.
It was really cool. They basically positioned the event as a gateway to your future self, equipped with tattoo and tooth gem stations, opportunities to book your next trip that was inspired by the platform. There was like tote bag, I don't know if it was screen printing or patches or something, but all that to say, the key takeaway here is that Pinterest provided a space for their audience to physically escape, leaving their worries behind them and manifest the life that they want to lead in the coming year. So to me, it was just an event that was flooded with joy and served as that necessary reminder that you can do things that bring you joy and nothing else, like point blank period. And I don't know, I think that's something that, again, like Gen Z needs to remind themselves of is something that brands can help them reconnect with and not be so stressed on like monetizing everything that they do.
Totally. And I feel like that's just a physical embodiment of what Pinterest stands for. Like they are there to inspire, they are there for self-expression and curation. And because they know that about themselves and they understand why Gen Z flocks to them, they say, oh, Gen Z loves creating mood boards. Oh, what's on their mood boards? Tattoo inspiration, tooth gems, whatever it may be. Like they are literally figuring out a way to bring that into the lives of their target audience, which I agree is genius. That's why it's sticking with you. Yeah. Something I even saw yesterday, which is just a micro example of what we're talking about. I needed to buy sweatpants last minute and I was just like running around the pouring rain and I saw Uniqlo and I never go into physical stores anymore. So like online shopping is just the best thing and the easiest thing, which next episode, teaser, online shopping. But I was like, okay, I'm going to go into Uniqlo. So I entered the physical store, which in itself just feels weird. I feel like going to stores these days is just a foreign experience. I go in, and Uniqlo, if you don't know, it's like a basics comfort wear brand. It's an awesome brand. Big fan of Uniqlo. And I walk in and they have this whole section at the front of like make your own flower bouquet. And it was honestly like very perplexing at first. I'm like, why is this flower station in Uniqlo? And their whole messaging was basically around, transitioning us from winter wardrobe to spring, lightening up your life, just making things feel airy and light. And I literally made myself a flower bouquet at Uniqlo
Are you
on my way to get
kidding me?
sweatpants. And I'm like, what a good idea. Because again, speaking to what we're saying, that's just a way to provide this like element of fun bouquet, like curating a flower bouquet is a hobby of so many people. It's a way of self-expression. Again, it's tapping into these core desires of Gen Z.
And it's a beautiful thing in general.
And of course, they're smart because they're like, okay, this will make for great content. And there's a contest you can enter by using a hashtag and taking a photo of your bouquet. And I'm like, this is so smart. This is a person who just needed sweatpants. Then I came into the store. I now think way more highly of Uniqlo. I will be going back to Uniqlo in store because I would just order, but now I'm like, you're going to give me flowers?
Yeah.
So anyway, just again to say, this is such an interesting ways brands can really tap in to the emotional component of our audience, which I think is an amazing segue into our next section.
It really is. You nailed
Perfect.
that, Lilia.
Yes. Amazing. Well, our last topic of the episode today is about emotional spending, which again, of course, ties into our points of joy and that rationale of why Gen Zers care about the way purchases make them feel. And according to WWD, 58% of Gen Zers identify as an emotional spender, and 54% of Gen Zers agree that emotional spending is a mood booster. Like, what's going to make them happier? What products can they buy that'll bring that little dopamine boost and that little serotonin of their day, which I know we're both advocates for this.
Oh, 100%. And to me, this is like the OG way of thinking about it was retail therapy. And it's just like, oh, I'm going to like go to the mall and get something that I don't need.
That I don't need.
But now it's just Gen Z flipping the script and reworking this concept to fit within their
As
own
we
realities
do.
all the time. All the time. We constantly need dopamine and serotonin. And we're seeing this come to life through treat culture, which is like a subset of this emotional spending conversation.
Oh, I saw such a funny meme yesterday that said, I don't understand why young people just need little treats. Like, what is with spending money? Oh, I have to do laundry. I need to get a little treat. And then the response to that was, sounds like someone needs a little treat.
Literally. Like, treat culture is like to me, it is what makes me go to bed with a happy heart each night. Like,
it's what makes life worth living.
100%. That $8 latte that I'll get in
You
the
love your
mornings,
$8 lattes, but
it's so messed up, but it makes me feel happy.
it makes you feel good. And again, going back to how we started this whole conversation, we don't necessarily have the funds to be living like this.
Yeah.
But because we prioritize what we talked about in
Gig economy.
gig economy, we want to feel good about something we're doing. What we're talking about now, we want to feel good about something we're doing. Everything ladders back up to what I think is emotional spending.
Completely agree. And just to kind of put this in context as well, again, like Gen Z is still spending money. They're just cautious about how they're spending it. So they're saving for like big trips and for these like more lavish expenditures or whatever. But the cool thing about treat culture is it could be, there's a store in Brooklyn that I'm sure you like a lot, Friends.
Love Friends.
Friends is the best. It's just like a knick-knack store.
That's the epitome. Gosh.
Yeah, it's a store that when you walk in, you don't need a single thing.
Not a single
inside
thing.
there. But you walk out spending
A lot of money.
A lot of money. And all that to say, it's like or like Sunny Angel dolls or Smeeskies, like those little things that Gen Z is obsessed with that gives them joy that doesn't really change anything about the way that they're living or like have a big impact on anything besides the impact that it has on like their perspective of the day.
Yeah, and the dopamine boost they get from it.
100%. And again, just going back to the gig economy conversation, like we live in a world that's a little spooky sometimes.
Yeah.
So this kind of just like resets our chakras a little bit.
Yeah, and I think so many of us believe that if we have been granted the privilege to have these funds or have a credit card we can use or have some sort of security, it almost rationalizes those purchases even more because it's like we live in this mindset of, we could die tomorrow. And so you want to be able to at least treat yourself to an extent. Again, of course, a lot of us are saving still and we are trying to be financially savvy in terms of planning for the future, but I think we do it in a different way where it is, again, tying back to treat culture and tying back to more impulse purchases. Because again, it's like we don't hold on to things as tightly as I think previous generations have. I think we have found a decent balance of planning and living in the moment. And I think these purchases are what helps that. I know I do this with like different events in the city. If I see a DJ I've never heard of, but my friends are all going and it's a $50 ticket, I'm going to buy that ticket if it's not in the budget for the month, because that's an experience. That's a moment to experience joy. That's a moment to be in communion with people. So I think we do a good job at kind of balancing those. So it's not to say brands feel disheartened if you're X amount or you feel like people aren't going to spend. They will if you are conveying that messaging that you are going to be attributing some positivity into that person's life, or at least make them feel good about themselves or cool, or like they can stand out in some way, shape, or form.
I love everything you just said. And just one other thing I'll add quickly to that is that this whole conversation is really, it's not about how your product makes that one person in your audience feel perceived by other people, or it's not like, oh, I'm wearing like the coolest logo, or like I don't know. It's not a matter of like, I bought this to show off to people. Yeah. It's a matter of I bought this to like elevate my own personal perception of myself.
Totally.
And this, goes into the larger conversation of why Gen Z loves self-expression so much and like the different avenues that they take to do that. Yeah. It all comes down to just like doing it for themselves.
100%.
And we'll get into that more in future episodes.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was an interesting little through line here.
I think, and we can cap this section out on this, I think a brand that just came to mind that does a great example of this, and I literally will give a personal anecdote on this brand as well, but Starface, I think, does an excellent job at tying themselves into this idea of treat culture while also providing a product that has efficiency. Like, it is something that has a purpose. If you don't know, Starface are the fun little pimple patches that you see a lot of Gen Zers walking around. I remember my mom being like, why is she wearing stickers all over her face? And I was like, it's literally a pimple patch because they have found a way to make pimples fun. I mean, what the heck? Who can say that? They made pimples fun. They made it almost like a weird perk. And my personal anecdote here is I don't know if you can see, but I have a pimple on my chin. Do you see it? It's going away. It was really bad 2 days ago.
Okay.
And I don't get pimples that often, humble brag. And I got this and I was like, oh my God, what do? I have all these things. I have all these social events. I have to go out into the world. But I have this massive pimple. I do not pop my pimples. And I was looking on Amazon for just like the cheapest thing. And I will say Starface is pricier. It's definitely not the cheapest of pimple patches, but I'm scrolling at all these ugly looking pimple patches. No offense if your brand has ugly pimple patches, but then I saw Starface and they have flower pimple patches for their spring collection.
Cute.
And it was double the price of the budget pimple patch. And I said, I'm going to buy it. So I paid double. Again, I don't have the budget to be doing this. I paid double because I know for a fact when I get that in the mail tomorrow, I'm going to put it on my face and I'm going to feel freaking good about my pimple.
Hell yeah, you will.
And because they made it that way. They said, and the way they market is genius because it's all aesthetic, fun selfies of people walking around the streets, always out in public with these pimple patches on, making it a moment, making it a vibe.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. That's how you tap into treat culture. My pimple patch was a treat. My pimple patch was a treat. That's crazy. That's awesome. I can't wait. So like, treat culture, it matters.
Yes, it does, and I cannot wait to see your selfies.
Yeah,
that is adorable.
I'll show you all of them.
Thank you so much. Okay, sweet. So that concludes our episode, I think, on Gen Z's relationship with money. So to recap, Gen Z is struggling, so they're becoming much more cognizant of how and when they want to spend their cash. Now knowing what we know about their dependence on their parents' retirement funds, their monetization of hobbies, and this large infatuation with treat culture and emotional spending, it's now up to brands to take this intel and show up for Gen Z in ways that not only prove their understanding of where Gen Z is at financially, but promote their messaging and products in a way that's reflective of that. Gen Z is smart. We are going to interact with the brands that prove that they understand us in all facets of our lives. And I think that's kind of like the reason that we're filming this podcast.
I think it is.
Going through those crossroads of culture, those different things that Gen Z really values, and talk about how brands can really, really hone in on that. So I'm excited to continue talking about all this stuff with you.
Me
it's going to be a blast. And if you, the listener, have any questions, thoughts, or potential topics you'd like for us to explore in future episodes, please send us an email at genzongenz@movershakers.co. But till then, we'll catch you on our next episode, which is, drumroll please, Gen Z's relationship with social shopping. It'll be a fun one. All right, Lilia, I think it's time for a treat.
I also think it's time for a little treat.
Want to get our second coffee of the day?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.